They said love could survive anything, but they were wrong. I watched her fall into the arms of another, in the very place we once shared our dreams. The laughter, the whispers, they cut deeper than any blade. This isn't just about betrayal. It's about the reckoning that follows. They've turned my love into ashes, and now it's my turn to burn everything they hold dear. A bud begins to develop. I looked around at the land before me. It was even better than what I had heard from the EPA. Chris Devereaux, who worked in EPA's higher management, had been urging me for over 3 months to check out this place. It took a while, but he finally convinced me. He was right. The land was great for testing the 2 microorganisms I had invented on a large scale. He had become very interested in my work after a story about my microorganisms appeared in an ecology magazine. In his office, we studied some maps of the area. I was especially interested in the plentiful water supply here. One of the craters at the top of the mountain had water almost to the edge from years of melting snow. We logged onto Google Maps for a closer view. It was clear that the water couldn't escape naturally, and it wouldn't be long before it began to overflow. This water source could really help us if we moved forward. By making an opening in the rocky edge, we could create a waterfall to give us the steady water supply needed for the decay process and to make soil. The only main challenge I saw was dealing with typical site issues to keep everything running smoothly. Before heading to the site, I rented a helicopter for 2 days to fly over the lake, the crater, and the whole area. I took high-definition images with a camera for closer look at night. I was glad I did because I noticed things I wouldn't have from the ground. The mountain's crater had a very thin side that sloped flat toward the area I was checking. We could lift in the crew, supplies, and equipment for the work. If we opened it as planned, sunlight would reach more of the accumulated ice on the west side of the crater, giving us extra water for years. There were 3 large flat areas nearby. Once we cleared the timber, they would be perfect for my needs. One would be for making soil, another for processing concrete, and the largest would be for sorting materials. Getting to this point only required changing the genetics of 2 microorganisms to create new types. Since most microorganisms are single-cell, the process was quite simple. After 3 years of careful research, I found out how to make it work. The key was altering the genetic structure of my newly created microorganisms. Thanks to my discovery, it is now clear that during natural decay, certain chemicals like arsenic can be turned into gas by these new microorganisms. The goal was to collect a type of gas so that it could be handled safely when done through a certain method. The small living organisms I created by mixing the right types were proven to be safe for the environment. Right now, I was standing about 22 miles away from an old gold mine that had been closed for a long time. Even though there was still gold in the ground, mining had stopped because of worries about the damage caused by past mining activities. With the current price of gold, reopening the mine could bring good money for someone. This was one reason I was interested in the area. The nearby mountains had plenty of iron ore, which would be great for mining. But mining brought up a problem I had to think about: how to safely deal with any waste materials created. The site I was checking out was a large strip mine that had naturally started to grow back since it was no longer in use. Like the gold mine, it was now owned by the state. After clearing the valuable trees, it would be a great place to see if my ideas worked. The issue with the gold mine was that the storage ponds were starting to break down, and environmental regulators were worried that dangerous chemicals might soon leak into the rivers. The alarms were about how much of these substances there were, not just their nature. If these problems weren't fixed quickly, they could hurt the river ecosystem for a long time. Since both Canada and the United States would be affected, action was urgent. Canada had known about the issue and had been quietly urging U.S. regulators to take steps for years. My professors at university were amazed when they saw those microorganisms work during our repeated small tests. Using everyday waste, we mixed topsoil, microorganisms, and specific harmful chemicals we wanted to get rid of. We watched through the glass as the organic matter was used up and changed. The gas produced burned for 64 days before it went out. After taking the new soil, we checked it for the harmful chemicals we had added at first. Surprisingly, we found no trace of them, and nothing was detected in the carbon dioxide produced by the gas burning. The method I used, called bianhua, which means transformation in Chinese, was a true success. We ran the same test 27 times with different amounts, and the results were always the same. The university officials were not happy when I patented it, thinking it would be worth billions for them. During this time, I also found an enzyme that broke down most household plastics, turning them into a liquid. When it evaporated, it left behind a chalky substance, mostly made of calcium. Tests showed that this material was safe for the environment, and the tiny organisms involved naturally died off once they were no longer needed. What I achieved came from the lessons my adopted father taught me about nature. He had great knowledge of how to care for the environment and had found ways to manage waste in our community. His work inspired me to create these organisms. I used his ideas to come up with a method to help heal our environment safely. It was quite easy to put my ideas together once I realized that all chemicals come from nature and only became harmful when people disrupted the natural balance. I designed a process to help restore some of that balance we had upset over time. The main difficulty in using my invention was that it needed a lot of space, time, and a steady supply of organic materials to mimic a natural process that took billions of years. The breakdown of materials was key to making everything work, as it allowed the tiny organisms to absorb different chemicals. I also found a way to change these microorganisms into a gas that could be collected and used as fuel. After finishing school, the EPA wanted to see if my method could work in a specific spot. For the past 2 weeks, I had been camping nearby, learning about the land to find useful resources and plan for a bigger project. At the end of each day, I sent Chris reports about what I noticed. One important observation was the lack of usual wildlife. It was worrying to see animal and bird bones around the ponds. After making some changes and doing a lot of groundwork, I decided this place would be great for large experiments. I also found several paths that seemed to be used by dirt bikers and hikers. Strangely, the gravel road that led to this area had been well kept. However, it would still need to be improved and paved. To prove that my theory and enzymes would work, I would have to use man-made materials on a large scale. The biggest challenge was getting enough of it. The nearest city, Richmond, Washington, was about a 2-hour drive away, and with a population of around 50,000, the waste there was not much. The path between the 2 abandoned mine sites could only be taken with a 4-wheel drive vehicle. The strip mine was huge and cut into 2 mountains. They started in a wide circle and gradually worked their way down until all the minerals were taken. This process changed the shape of the mountains a lot. The road was wide enough for 2 large trucks to pass each other. As I made my way down, I noticed many parts had been cleared and leveled, which would help with my plan. It took me more than 2 hours to get down from the top. I pulled out my cell phone and called my contact at the EPA, hoping he hadn't left for the weekend since it was Friday. He answered quickly. "Listen," I said, "this is possible, but we need a lot of money to start. We must take care of the old strip mine and allow for new plants to grow. The road connecting the gold mine and this place needs to be fixed to allow large trucks to travel back and forth. Luckily, there are no significant rivers or streams nearby to worry about. Once that's done," I continued, "we need to bring in and sort the first large batch of materials. The upper parts of the strip mine are flat and good for this. We'll have to carefully work through this area using the flat space to create layers over the materials before tankers can empty the dirty ponds. Also, we will need a lot of yard waste. We can take rocks from the mountains and crush them to make a stable base. Then we'll cover everything with topsoil," I explained. "After we clean out a pond, we can reuse the materials to help the ecosystem work better. As each part is leveled off, we will put in pipes to safely move the gases that come from breaking down waste. After soaking the new area with the liquids from the ponds, I would plant clover in the layers of soil because it helps improve the soil," I added. "Over time, we would fill the strip mine and form a valuable flat piece of land. By the time we returned to where we planted the clover, a lot of the soil would have gotten better." "How long will it take to finish the first level?" he asked. "Given the size of this old strip mine, it should take about a year for the first level, which is the smallest if we have enough materials," I replied. "As we move to each level, the area to fill will grow larger. This could be a 10 to 20-year project, leading to a huge flat area of land ready for new use." With the Philippines changing their agreement to take waste from New York City, can this space hold half of what they produce for the next few years? Chris asked. Is the train line into the mine still working? Yes, and it can handle all of it, I answered. For every cubic foot of waste, you get an eighth of that amount as soil after the process finishes. Starting this project will need a lot of money at first, and I must agree to a 200-year lease on the land. I also need to find a way to make it profitable. If I can't cover the expenses, I won't go ahead with it. So you're thinking about it? Chris asked, laughing. I knew you'd be the perfect person for this. Let's meet in Olympia on Monday to make a plan. Too many people depend on the river system for us to overlook this. Start brainstorming a name for your new company, he suggested. With the governor's support, I think we can get funding through a grant or a loan to kick off the project. Why do you think I would want to take on such a big job? I asked. First, the city of New York spends a lot of money on waste management, which is done in a way similar to recycling old cars, he explained. I have to say his idea caught my interest. So I agreed to meet him and see what he had in mind. It had been almost 3 months since the Democratic governor, and the EPA made a deal. I secured a 200-year lease on the land, the funding we needed, and a long-term contract with the city of New York. The main road to the site was improved with new concrete thanks to the state, and a logging company had already started clearing the area. The land I leased stretched 40 miles long and 16 miles wide, and I also got the rights to any minerals found there. Getting this deal was tough. The governor worried I might harm the land. Chris worked hard to convince him to go forward. The condition was that I wouldn't fully own the mineral rights for up to a year, provided they were satisfied with my work. If the governor didn't approve my project after the first year, he would take it over, and I would receive a sizable yearly payment for using my system. The leased land included both a strip mine and a gold mine. Starting in the new year, the first trainload of materials would be delivered. A team was already inspecting the rail line and making repairs. The current turnaround area allowed trains to move quickly. This gave the timber company 3 months to clear as much as possible from the area where we would begin work. They expected it would take until the end of the year to remove the trees from the road leading to the strip mine. Their immediate focus was on making the road safe for the heavy equipment they would use. They planned to bring in 4 rock-crushing machines by helicopter. Once they were in position, these machines would create stones of any size needed. I planned to have a team work full-time to produce fine crushed stone sand. First, we needed it for road repairs, and later for making concrete. I wanted to build a concrete road on the far side of the land I controlled. Until then, we would have to manage with what we had. The environmental agency and the governor decided where to get water from the mountain. They agreed to build a small hydroelectric plant that would generate electricity. Once it was ready, it would provide power for about 100,000 homes. The amount of water taken from the mountain would be balanced by the usual winter snowfall. As the timber company cleared the land, I had my teams come in behind them. They removed roots, mulched plants, and loaded everything onto trucks for our soil-making area. There, we would turn it into fine mulch. Meanwhile, 2 other teams were busy sorting materials for new plastic products. One Sunday, I was out checking our progress when something unexpected happened. My all-terrain vehicle startled a horse a woman was riding. The horse reared up and threw her off, causing her to fall about 45 feet down to the next level of the road. The horse then ran away. I was shocked because I hadn't expected to see her or the horse at all. The horse looked like a strong mare, well cared for. It took me about 20 minutes to get to her. She seemed to be in her mid-teens, with shoulder-length brown hair and a gentle round face. I couldn't see much else because she was dressed in winter clothes. She was unconscious and looked a bit bruised. I noticed a blood stain on her right leg and saw a growing pool of blood nearby. I carefully tore a bit of her blue denim clothing and found a long cut along her lower leg. I felt thankful that my adopted father, a Chinese monk, had let me watch him as he helped people with their injuries in the community. He often helped them until they could get to a hospital. The lessons he taught me were about to come in handy. I remembered the many hours spent alongside him, caring for animals just like he did for people. The stitching skills I learned were now going to be useful again. When I hesitated to learn these skills, my father reminded me that there was a purpose in what I was learning. It would just take the right moment for me to understand its importance. She had a serious injury. Using the techniques my father taught me, I approached her carefully, making sure that if she woke up during my work, she wouldn't feel any pain. I found a small plant, trimmed it, and took the part I needed. I grabbed my sturdy first aid kit and used the stem to fix the damaged area and tied everything to stop any more bleeding. After stitching her leg, I loosened the ties I had used so her body could feel normal again. I kept a piece of the plant stem, putting it in my shirt pocket because I knew the doctor would need to know what I had done. Although the plant was safe for people, I realized her body would start to reject it after a few hours. I carefully lifted her into the passenger side of my all-terrain vehicle and was surprised by how light she felt. I started driving back to my truck to take her to the hospital. I figured she had lost about a pint of blood, so she would probably feel dizzy when she woke up. "Who are you, and what happened?" the young lady asked as she started to wake up. By this time, we were getting close to my Ford truck. "My name is Dirk Blackstone," I replied. "My vehicle startled your horse and it threw you. I came down and found you unconscious and bleeding, so I did what I could to help until we got to the hospital." "You should call whoever you need to," I said, giving her my cell phone, "and let them know where I'm taking you." The young lady took my cell phone and entered a 10-digit phone number. When someone answered, she said, "Mom, my horse threw me. I'm on the way to the hospital in Richmond." There was a pause, then she said, "Mom, I should let you talk to the man who found me. He can give you the answers you need." She handed me the phone as I turned off the vehicle. "Hi, this is Dirk Blackstone. How can I help you?" I asked. "What's wrong with my daughter?" the woman on the other end asked. "I'm not sure because I didn't check her fully," I replied. "When I found her, she was unconscious with an injury on her right leg. I stopped the bleeding the best I could, but she will need a doctor to help her heal properly. She has lost a lot of blood and is weak, but she is stable. Take her to Richmond County Hospital. My husband and I will meet you there," the woman said. "You might want to let the doctor in the emergency room know to be ready to talk when we get there," I suggested. "He needs to understand what I've done so he can help her." When I was 6 years old, the authorities in China once again restricted the growth of Christianity in their country. They came in the dark and took my father, who was a respected missionary. From that moment, my mother had to hide us as much as possible. We wore local clothing and moved around often to blend in. Without the help of local friends, we would have been caught right away. Lachey, whom I called grandfather and one of our family's biggest supporters, took me to the Shaolin Temple after the authorities arrested my mother. He thought they might come after him next, so he believed the temple was the safest place for me. He brought me there with my identification and some personal belongings from my parents. To this day, I don't remember what Lachey told them. I just knew that everything had to change. Because I was considered a danger to everyone connected to me, my real name was forgotten. From the day I arrived until I left, they called me Wuming, which means no name in English. They used my real name quietly, but not in public. From age 6 to age 15, I stayed with the Buddhist monks. I had to stay hidden during the day from tourists visiting the temple. If I went outside, it had to be at night. I wore monk's clothes, kept my head covered, and stayed away from bright places to avoid being seen. I was taught to stay unnoticed. In the quiet of the night, on the steps of the temple, I became friends with a local girl named Suling, who faced many challenges in her life. We talked every night, at least when she could sneak out. This became something we both looked forward to. I guess I brought calm to her busy world and she balanced mine. Suling lived with her uncle and his family. Her older cousin often tried to control her. Although we never saw each other's faces, Suling wore my father's ring around her neck. I had given it to her and she promised to return it when the authorities released her father from prison. They were leaving the country because he and his brother had lost their jobs. When she gave it back to me, she said it brought her comfort during tough times. The night she said goodbye, I felt as if I lost a part of myself. As we parted, I told her that even if she saw herself as just a caterpillar now, one day she would become a beautiful butterfly, free to follow her own way. My mornings were spent learning what the monks thought was important for my life. I studied sciences, nature, and math for years. 3 afternoons a week were focused on lessons in Zen philosophy and martial arts. The master taught me ancient wisdom, valuing my connection to nature and life. Under his guidance, I became fluent in Cantonese, Mandarin, and English. He taught us that our bodies are special and should be treated well. The knowledge he shared was meant to help others and improve lives. During those years, I learned to speak and write in Cantonese very well, making it my second language. One day I asked my teacher if he ever had to go beyond his lessons. He said everyone has a moment when their beliefs are tested. When that moment came for me, I had to use what I learned to keep myself safe. I made sure the other person was okay, but their life changed forever. I still think about that choice and wonder if I did the right thing. About 3 days before the Chinese government came to the monastery with many officers, my adopted father took me to the American embassy in the middle of the night. He had papers that proved I was an American citizen and left me at the gates. The embassy staff found me there the next morning and took me inside. It was at the embassy that I found out my parents had been accused of being spies for the U.S. government and sentenced to die. The Chinese government wanted me to become a double agent. That explained why they had looked for me so hard. Before I got to the embassy, they thought I had been captured. According to what the embassy told me, my parents had been taken out and killed in front of others at the work camp to make a point. I was sent to Scotland to live with Bruce McGregor because they believed I needed someone I could trust while learning about Western culture. He had worked with my father and was present when I was born. Bruce helped me with my schoolwork and showed me Western customs. With his help, I learned to read and write in English. I graduated from high school at the top of my class. By then, my parents' estate had been settled and returned to me. We both learned a lot during this time. He caught up on what had happened in China since he had left, and I learned how to enjoy my newfound freedoms. When he saw the cross I wore, he asked me how I could keep it. I explained that it was a gift from my Chinese grandfather on the day he left me with the monks. The monks had tried to take it from me, but I held on tightly. Because I was determined, one monk decided to support me. With his help and guidance, I could keep the cross because none of the other monks dared to challenge him. When I was little, the cross was so big that wearing it was hard. As I grew, it became a natural part of me. My teacher often said he had never seen such determination in someone so young. That is why he became my protector. The bond we shared and the questions I asked led him to teach me even more. After I graduated high school, I came to America to continue my education. My time with Bruce had been very enlightening. The Western ways were new to me at first, but since I was young, I learned to adapt quickly. During that time, I discovered how to appreciate life, and this helped me understand my parents' journey better. Bruce's grandfather, Angus McGregor, was quite a character. He had lived so long that he didn't worry much about what others thought. He often spoke in Gaelic, a language that is slowly disappearing. I found out he chose to speak this way because he wanted to keep his private life just that, private. By the time I moved to America, I could finally talk to him in his language. He taught me how to make his favorite drink. While I was in college, I experimented with the recipe and created my own version. He believed a good drink should be smooth, like a soft touch. For him, the longer it rested in the cool, dark barrels, the better it was. I noticed that the young lady was fainting in and out of awareness. This showed me her body was trying to handle what was happening. I arrived at the emergency entrance and carried her inside. Her parents were there, clearly worried about her. The doctor, who was Chinese-American, guided me on where to place her. He quickly began to check her and asked me to step out of the room. About an hour later, the doctor came out to talk to me. In Cantonese, he said, "The last time I saw stitches like these was when I was a child, after my grandfather's treatment. Could you tell me what happened?" Her vein was damaged and could not be fixed, I explained in Cantonese, showing him a part of the plant I had used. I wrapped it up and secured both ends. The sooner it was treated, the better. "I have heard of such things before," the doctor responded. "Not only did you save her life, but you may have also saved her leg. We will start her on medicine to prevent infection." I was worried there could be problems because of what I did, I admitted. "No, you did what was needed to save a life. I still have relatives back home I stay in touch with," he reassured me. "Are you the wombing the authorities were looking for?" "Some questions are better left unanswered," I replied, "until the right time comes." "Still," the doctor continued, "you saved that young lady's life. Without your help, she would have faced serious trouble. She is already in surgery to fix her vein properly. I could tell from the way you handled the situation and what her parents said that you have remarkable skills. When I told the surgeon what you did, he was very impressed. I informed her parents about how important your actions were. Thank you, I said in his language as the girl's parents approached. You're welcome, the doctor replied in English as the girl's parents stood in front of us. Mr. Blackstone, the man said, extending his hand. I'm Ian Connor, and this is my wife, Bonnie. We want to thank you for everything you've done. It was nothing, I said. I'm just glad I could help. The doctor thinks she'll be fine. That's what we were told, Bonnie added. Alana will be in surgery for about 2 hours. She asked me to see if you could wait because she wants to talk to you when she wakes up. Maybe while we wait, we could get something to eat, Ian suggested. Ian was tall, much taller than my 5'11". His strong voice and build showed he was quite strong. With dark hair that had some gray, he seemed like a knowledgeable and serious person. Alana looked a lot like her mother. I could see why people might think they were sisters. They shared a strong bond. Both had long hair that framed their faces nicely. Alana was only an inch or two shorter than me and spoke softly, which many said I did too. While we were in the cafeteria, they asked about my work at the old mine and the quiet area around it. They wanted to know where I was living. I told them I had brought a big trailer with a generator and set it up near the gold mine because it still had working sewage and water from the old office. I learned they ran a small stable where they took care of horses and offered riding tours during the season. They mentioned Alana was looking for new trails to ride, but she was going to places she probably shouldn't have been. Their place was on the other side of the mountain, hidden from the main road. She's only 16, but she's as strong-willed as her mother, Ian said. Maybe this will teach her to be more careful. Don't be too tough on her, I replied. Even though I'm busy working 6 days a week, she couldn't have known we were in the area. It was a surprise for me, too. What will you do about the few snowfalls we get in winter? Bonnie asked. The snow will actually help things break down when it melts, I explained. Moisture helps with decomposing. Before we cover the layers with soil, we will add special microorganisms to speed up the process. The warmth that builds up will keep working, even when it gets cold. By the time we walked back, we found out Alana was already doing well. The surgery had gone smoothly. The surgeon told her parents to be thankful, saying it was a miracle that I had been there, or things could have been very different. You did a great job, the surgeon said to me. Have you ever thought about working in medicine? No, I replied. I chose to study ecology because I love nature and the earth. That's too bad because your work is so good it makes mine look like beginner's work, he said. You've given me something to aim for. He told her parents that they could fix the vein with little trouble and that there wouldn't be a lasting mark. Her parents went in first. Alana was sitting up when I was allowed to see her. Her parents brought me in. After talking for a few minutes, she asked her parents to leave so she could ask me something privately. Ian looked curious, but Bonnie suggested he step out. Alana asked me to sit on her bed so she could whisper. I woke up feeling pain and saw you next to me, Alana said. Suddenly, I felt calm. The next thing I knew, we were slowing down because we were close to your truck. Catch me up on everything. I used some of the Zen and martial arts skills I learned. They taught me how our nerves, muscles, and brain work together. I made a block in the signals to buy us some time to get you to the hospital. The doctors told me it was a lot more complicated than that, Alana replied. Your explanation is good enough for my parents. The doctors said your actions showed you have many years of training. Just between us, I was raised by monks who shared their knowledge with me, I said. That's why I could help. Alana leaned closer and thanked me warmly. I know I would have been in serious trouble without you. So, Dirk, would you think about being my date for the spring prom? I'm in 11th grade and will be 17 by then. I can't without your parents' approval, I replied. I'm 5 years older than you. I should mention, though, that I'm not very skilled in social situations. Where did you grow up? Alana asked. In a quiet area of China, far from where I was born, I said. My parents were American missionaries who lost their lives for their beliefs. I moved to America from my godfather's home in Scotland to go to university, which is how I ended up here. Something about that made her smile widely. We chatted for a while until her parents returned to let her know she would be staying overnight for observation, just in case her leg swelled. I said my goodbyes and got ready to leave when Bonnie said she would walk out with me. "Dirk," she said, "Alana told us she woke up for a moment and saw you working on her leg. At that time, she felt relief. I'm not sure what you did, but to my daughter, you are quite special." I left them, thinking I might never see her again, not realizing how determined Alana was about having me take her to the prom. It was a Saturday toward the end of February. Winter had been mild, so there wasn't much snow. I was working with an engineer who was planning a concrete road. While we were working, we found a big empty space on the side of a mountain, hidden by some trees. This spot was right behind where a new waterfall would flow by the end of summer. We were both wearing winter jackets. I joked, "This would be a great place to build if we know the mountain is safe." "What's interesting is that there is no water nearby," the engineer replied. "It's like a natural fortress. If we add steel beams, it could last a long time." It took us about 30 minutes to find a way up, and we were impressed by what we saw. We measured the area, and it was 28 feet high, 54 feet deep, and 60 feet wide. The engineer thought that, after leveling the ground for the road, we could create a flat space to install a septic system. We could also make a yard and a driveway leading to the road. With 28 feet, you could have 3 floors, he said, and a garage. The roof would have a good slope for rainwater to run off. Since the sun rises in the east, there would be plenty of light. I would use steel beams and poured concrete, with a patio in front for easy window cleaning. "Let's see if we can make a pond in front of it, allowing water to flow into it," I suggested. "It would be a nice place to relax after a long day." As we explored further, we realized a large pond could be made, with a smaller waterfall from it. He suggested the patio could have steps leading into the pond. They would need to install a deep pipe to let the water flow under the road. "The main issue is finding a water source," I said. "Other than that, it looks good." "If we are extending the county road, we can connect to their water line," he said. "With the new power plant being built, electricity won't be a problem. My biggest worry is how to set that up for you." "Come up with some plans," I replied. "Include estimated costs. We need to check with legal and accounting to see if this can be arranged as a mortgage for me." "Are you serious about this?" he asked. "Yes, I want to officially lease the land," I answered. "Some of the trees will need to be removed to give me a clear view. It will provide privacy and a beautiful landscape when it's done." Just then, I got a phone call from site security. A father and daughter were on horseback and wanted to talk to me about something coming up. As we were nearly back to my truck, I said, "Tell them I'm about 10 minutes away." The engineer looked confused and asked, "How did you impress a young lady so much that she's looking for you?" "Just one of those rare times when I looked presentable," I replied. He laughed as we got into my truck to go see them. When we got closer, we spotted them on their horses. Alana had her long hair down, making her look surprisingly grown up. "That young lady is very beautiful," the engineer said. "How did you meet her?" "I saw her riding one Sunday when things were quiet. My four-wheeler startled her horse and caused quite a stir," I explained. "You must have made a strong impression," he said as we approached. "She has a look of eagerness on her face that says a lot." "Good thing I got ready this morning," I replied. The engineer chuckled as we parked the truck. Alana's blue eyes sparkled when I got out. She wore blue jeans, a sweater, and an open winter jacket. Ian, her dad, dressed similarly and wore a cowboy hat. "Hi there," I said. "Why didn't you just call me?" "Mom didn't save your number," Alana said. "Would you like to take a tour of the place?" I offered. "You can tie your horses behind the security gate." Just then, a helicopter flew overhead, heading toward the crater with a large container, grabbing our attention. "Great. The first load of fish is arriving a week early," I said. "That means we can release the first set of eagles soon." "You're bringing eagles to the area," Ian said. "Why?" "The trash we're recycling will attract many rodents. Eagles will help keep their population in check," I explained. "We're stocking the crater lake so they have food options." Ian seemed interested and called his wife to share what we were doing. After we got into my truck, we took a tour. I first showed them the part that was already filled and covered with dirt. We had buried about 12 cubic feet of waste there. "Some of this waste includes contaminated water from holding ponds," I said. "You can see the metal pipes coming out of the ground. Once things start breaking down, we'll remove the caps." Alana looked through the binoculars and asked, What did you plant in the soil? Clover, I replied. Clover helps purify and enrich the soil. By the time we return to add another layer to that area, the clover will have done its job. When they spotted the concrete plant almost finished, Ian asked about it. I'm extending the county road to the other side of the property, I explained. Then I'll go around on both sides and run the county water with it. Eventually, it will connect where I first met you. You're planning for the future, Ian said. I didn't understand what my daughter was trying to tell me, but now I do. When you finish, this will be a very appealing piece of land. We're fortunate because the old strip mine will become the base of the new concrete road, I added. That gives you an idea of how long this project will take. That explains why you need the big rock-crushing machines and the stockpile of crushed rock, Ian said. Your supply of waste must be steady, he continued. What about the raw material for making topsoil? They're still hauling out timber, I replied. I have cleanup crews taking anything that isn't fixed in place, and we've told several nearby counties that we can take their garbage and yard waste for free. Next, I drove them to the base of the mountain where we found the cavern. They could see the markings for the road we were working on. By the end of summer, if everything goes as planned, that cavern will be my new home, I said. It will give me a clear view of the entire valley below. Alana's eyes brightened when I mentioned this. At the top of the mountains, there will be a working electric generation plant in 3 months, creating a small waterfall right in front of my future home. Won't that create a drainage issue? Alana asked. No, because that side of the house will have a concrete patio, I explained. The front will face the large yard and driveway, making it easy to clean the windows and letting in plenty of light. We stepped out of the truck and walked up the steep path to the cavern. From inside, we could see the entire stripped mine and the area around it. Both Ian and his daughter were surprised by its size. I never knew how big of a project this would be, Ian said. I was just a boy when the mine stopped operating, so I didn't realize how much was taken out. We started at one end and are working toward this end because we need time to build the road, I said. Before we finish, I hope to level the land right to the old gold mine by using some of the new soil we're creating. As we walked back down, I was invited to join them for Sunday dinner. I accepted and asked if there was anything I should bring. It was fascinating to see Alana's face when her father brought it up. Finding the Connors' home was simpler than I expected. The first thing I noticed was the solar panels on the roof. Their house was a roomy ranch style made of logs, very well cared for, showing that the family took pride in it. They had a lot of land for growing crops, and the property was right next to the mountain. The big barn nearby could hold more than 50 horses. Ian was right. If it weren't for the sign at the road, I would have missed it completely. The tall cedar trees hid it well. When I spotted the racetrack, I realized he was breeding and training horses for racing. The trees along the edges were planted for privacy and to block out the noise from the busy highway. Ian waited for me at the front door as I got out of my truck. I brought a bag with a bottle of my scotch for him to try and some flowers for his wife. Growing up with Bruce, getting invited for Sunday dinner meant dressing nicely. I felt a little out of place in dress pants, a sports jacket, a shirt, and a tie, while Ian wore blue jeans and a dress shirt. He laughed as I walked up. My daughter must have thought the same thing as you. She spent the afternoon figuring out what dress to wear. I wonder which of you will impress the other more. I guess I'm still a bit old-fashioned, I said. I haven't quite caught up with American culture yet. It started to change years ago when churches stopped needing everyone to dress up for Sunday, Ian replied. Don't people realize they should bring their best to God no matter what? I asked. That's a good question, Ian said. I never thought of it like that. It's like everything. The meaning of words changes, and that can affect how we understand things, I said. For example, the original meaning of Bethel in Hebrew was a home that follows God, but in English it became house of God, which changes what it really means. I handed him the bag and told him what was inside. How did you know I liked scotch? Ian asked. I didn't, I admitted. My godfather's grandfather showed me how to make it. So, in a way, you're my test subject because this is about 6 months old. Hopefully, it has aged well, like it was resting in wooden barrels. Seeing Alana in a dress surprised me. She looked wonderful. The dress really suited her. The winter clothes had hidden her shape, changing my previous thoughts about her. I was beginning to look forward to taking her to the spring prom. Her mother soon noticed that we were both stealing glances at each other. Ian found a vase for the flowers I had brought for his wife. Bonnie thanked me for being so kind. Ian asked how I liked my scotch, and I said with ice. After he gave me my drink, he took a sip. "Fear aita read," Ian said in Gaelic. "I guess it's good," I replied. Ian chuckled and said, "My wife's grandfather would say it's smooth and rich in flavor, something I haven't tasted in a long time." Seeing my confused expression, he asked, "Did I say something wrong?" "No," I said. "My godfather's grandfather often uses that saying, but in Gaelic." I turned to Bonnie and asked, "If you don't mind, could you tell me the name of Ian's grandfather?" "Angus McGregor," Bonnie answered. "Why do you ask?" "Do you know a Bruce McGregor?" I asked. "I have a cousin by that name who is a priest. He spent many years in China," Bonnie said. "He returned to Scotland when the situation for Christians in China got tough," she added. I reached into my wallet and pulled out some photos. I found a picture of Bruce and showed it to her. I could tell by her reaction that she recognized him. "How do you know him?" Bonnie asked. "Many people in China knew me as Kui Xiao Yi Ge because the authorities couldn't find me," I explained. "Bruce is my godfather. I lived with him from the time I was 15 until I came back to go to university here." Tears filled Bonnie's eyes as she said, "Ni haon ionad go mbrythian to tig lac soil" in Gaelic, which means it's no wonder you feel like family. Ian and I sat at the bar while Bonnie and Alana worked together. I learned that we were all enjoying a traditional Scottish meal of haggis, neeps, and tatties. Haggis is made from sheep's organs and mixed with spices, served with turnips and potatoes. Like many people in older cultures, we had learned not to waste any part of an animal. The Western culture I was learning about had different ideas about what was considered food. During dinner, I shared my family background and Bruce's connection with my parents. They knew that my parents had helped him escape from China before he was captured. Bonnie asked many questions about family, and I shared what I could. Alana asked a few questions too, and I did my best to answer them. Ian and I talked a lot about Angus and his distrust of authorities. I used my experiences to help him understand why someone might feel this way. By the end of dinner, both Alana and I had their blessing to become closer friends. I found out that Ian's parents moved to the United States before he was born. He met his wife while studying in Edinburgh, Scotland, where they dated for 2 years before getting married. Bonnie grew up in Kildrumery and was working in the capital when she met Ian. After dinner, Ian offered me another drink, but I said no. I remembered a classmate who had lost their life because of a drunk driver, and I had decided a long time ago that drinking before driving wasn't worth it. The spring dance was planned for the first Friday in April. Alana asked me if I could dance. I said I knew some traditional dances, but not the modern ones. She laughed a little at my answer. After saying goodnight, Alana walked me to my truck. "I knew you were special from the first moment I saw you," Alana said. "The way you treated everyone showed kindness and warmth. Everything I saw today just made me believe that more. Even my parents noticed how nice you are." "I was brought up to respect all living things," I replied. "Anything that lives feels emotions just like we do. Have you ever heard a Lonely Robin song?" "You're a unique man, Dirk Blackstone. The day you said goodbye at the hospital, I told my mom we would get married one day," Alana said. "She says I have an old soul, and I see that in you too." I wanted to say something back, but she smiled and said, "Good night, my future husband," before heading to her house. "Things are blooming." It took about 2 weeks for the engineer to get back to me after working on my house plans. He wanted to give me a few options. He created 3 different designs for me to look at, thinking he understood what I liked. Along with the basic layouts, he provided a finished drawing. Like many people, he had a better idea of what he didn't know than what he did. Since he didn't know me well, he didn't realize that I saw everything he suggested as a luxury. For 9 years, I had slept on a hard floor using bamboo for a bed, but to him, these were just regular comforts. If I hadn't met Alana, I would have told him his ideas weren't for me. But Alana helped me see that thinking about other people's needs is important. In the end, I understood I would have to accept what most people consider normal as part of his plan. While discussing with the accounting team, we decided to include the amount of material we would need to move to level the new concrete road according to the engineer's design. This would save time transporting materials elsewhere and help shape the land for my future home. Since we were covering the costs and donating the road to the county when it was finished, we figured we could write off the full amount. The accountant thought it was a good idea that would help everyone involved. They decided that since I didn't ask for pay for the extra hours I worked, they would only charge me for the actual costs, not what it might sell for. In the end, the total cost for the work and materials was expected to be under $35,000. I told David that if that was the case, I could write a check for the full amount once the work was finished. While speaking with the county to get permission to extend the road, they asked us to install wiring for electricity, phone lines, sewage, and water underground, along with some transformers as we worked on the road. This would save the county a lot of money in the future. It was a usual expense for anyone who was developing land in the county. The issue was we were not a land development company. Sadly, the county did not see it that way. So we had to pass the issue to our lawyers. The county suggested that these costs could be added to the electrical power plant. That was when we found out that they had a company interested in buying the plant once it was done, if the state agreed to sell. It turned out to be the same company that was providing them with electricity. Many people felt unsure about their request, so we sent their request to the governor's office since they were supporting this part of our project. We knew the county didn't see the bigger picture. We asked the governor's office to manage the complex issues. Along with their request, we also asked for the first chance to buy the operation once it was completed, if the government decided to sell it. My team and I later learned that making that request was a wise choice because, after looking into it, we discovered that the governor was about to retire and was willing to sell it to us at a fair price, as long as we followed certain environmental rules. The layouts of my future home had very different designs. I picked the one that left part of the house open toward the large, flat area that we would create. When it was finished, I would have about 3 to 4 acres of flat land in front of the house. This new yard would also give me a great view of the whole valley below. We decided that when we built the driveway, it would be wide enough to push the winter snow off to both sides. The design would also allow for a nice view of the valley from the kitchen nook, and the family room. The French doors leading to the patio would be placed between the kitchen nook and the family room, creating a spacious patio that would be 8 feet wide and 40 feet long. The kitchen nook added a nice touch, giving a clear view of the pond. The house would be longer than it was wide, with just 2 levels and a crawl space in between. This design made it easy to work on plumbing and electrical things without messing up the inside of the house. For the pond, we would use rocks, gravel, sand, and concrete mixed together to make it look natural, as if it had always been there. It would be up to 10 feet deep. There would be 2 concrete steps on either side of the patio leading down into the pond. It was big enough for my guests and me to swim under the waterfall if we wanted. Designed this way, the pond would be larger than the house itself. The main waterfall would pour down into the center of the pond. A smaller waterfall would drop 45 feet, creating a pool that would flow under the road through a large culvert we had to put in. We planned to plant some shrubs around the edges to give us all some privacy. David and I knew we were making a new creek in the area, and we would need to adjust the stream's path as the land level changed. Once the water started moving, we would face many new challenges. We didn't want a low area where the water flowed compared to the rest of the land. What I liked was that the back part of the cavern we didn't need would have a concrete floor, so we could store extra vehicles there if we wanted. It would be lit by lights from the house. Looking at the front of the house when it was finished would be the only way to see that part of it was built into the mountain. We would need to check the roof of the cavern regularly to make sure there were no loose rocks. The second floor would have 4 bedrooms, each with windows facing the valley. The big master bedroom in the front corner would let me see both the flat land and the valley. Every room would have its own bathroom and walk-in closet. I was impressed with how much sunlight would come into the house. David planned to cut stone to look like the mountain rock and put it on the side facing the country road. His work would make that side of the house blend in, making it hard to see from the valley. He thought that once we started work on the county road, it would take about 3 months to finish. What made me want to go ahead with this plan was David's belief that the cavern would help keep our home at a comfortable temperature all year, and we would use electricity to heat it. This would eliminate the need for air conditioning. The inside walls would be covered with drywall and insulated to make it look more like a home. From the outside, it was hard to tell it was made of concrete and steel. That's when I decided that if Alana and I were still together, I would ask for her opinion when buying and organizing anything for the inside of my house. The only thing I wanted to add was to cover the part facing the mountain with brick that matched the colors around it. 2 big barn-style doors hid an unused area of the cave, giving us complete privacy. I faced a lot of teasing all week because it was my first Saturday off while planning everything. David, the engineer, told everyone early in the week that I was spending the day with my new girlfriend. He said Alana was a lovely person, which got everyone curious. He mentioned that she had come by with her father. The women in our office were especially impressed since they knew having a father's approval was important. I was flooded with questions. Who is she? What is she like? How did you meet? What are your plans for the day? The office staff grew more and more frustrated with my silence. After many renovations, the gold mine's office building was now our workspace. The 8 large ponds had the water levels lowered to prevent overflow. We had covered the ponds with fine black mesh to keep animals and birds away. All the leftover debris had been cleaned up, and fresh clover was growing, making it safe for the wildlife. It seemed like the EPA was keeping a close eye on things. We even saw 3 more releases of live trout. Even with a 10% loss, they believed there were enough fish for the conservation group to start releasing eagles. When I talked with Chris from the EPA on Monday, I learned that the governor of Washington State was getting a lot of questions about our project. Some environmental groups were trying to stop our work, and I found that confusing. It was upsetting that good environmental efforts could be used for political reasons. Moments like this made me think about stricter systems of government, places where people might not have a chance to speak up. I was still trying to understand true freedom, which felt complicated. That's when Chris and I decided to turn the eagle release into a media event. We had put too much time and energy into this project to let a protest group get in our way. Instead of bringing just 1 pair of eagles, we decided to bring 2 pairs. We planned to have them flown in by helicopter to a spot on the mountain near the ridge where we would set them free. After talking things over, we came up with a plan that might work despite the changing ideas of others. On Wednesday night, I called Bonnie to ask if I could take Alana on a day trip Saturday. Bonnie thought it was a nice idea and agreed. Then I called Alana and we made our plans. I suggested she dress for different types of weather. I had to make some quick changes to arrange a helicopter and a special team with little notice. I wanted to create nesting spots on the east side of the mountain that faced the valley to encourage the eagles to settle there. It took the whole week to get everything ready. Even though it was expensive because of the short notice, I felt it was worth it. We managed to create 8 safe nesting areas on the mountain designed to protect the eagles from the weather. Even better, the nesting spots were hidden from view from the ground. I hoped the eagles would naturally choose these spots to live. If they did, it could become a place for visitors to observe them in the wild. As we worked, I decided that the area would be off-limits for hunting from that point forward. I had only told Alana that our day together would start with something surprising. When I picked her up that morning, she was pacing with excitement. Her parents mentioned how eager she seemed. During the drive into Richmond, she was curious about what was happening at the site, asking questions about why we needed to be in the city by 9. I was happy to see she was just as excited about the project as I was. Alana was a bit annoyed that I wouldn't tell her our plans for the day. I wanted it to be a complete surprise, thinking that if I shared my ideas, she might not be as excited. When I pulled into the Richmond airport, she started to realize this wasn't going to be a usual outing. As we parked, she spotted a man walking toward a military helicopter. "Look at that man! He has 2 cages with a pair of eagles in each," Alana said. "I wonder what they're going to do with them." "They're coming with us on a helicopter ride," I replied. "We're going to let them go from the top of the mountain after we fly into the crater." Alana's blue eyes sparkled with excitement. "Really? That sounds amazing." "I've never been this close to an eagle before," she added. "You're in for a treat," I replied. "If all goes well, you'll get an even better look. I brought gloves for us to wear while we prepare to let the 2 pairs of eagles go." "Gloves? Why do we need those?" Alana asked. "Those birds can be strong and a bit wild." Exactly. The gloves will protect us from their claws, I explained. They cover our arms and most of our hands, only leaving our fingertips open. Alana's eyes lit up even more. This is so exciting. Are we really able to do this? I've never done anything like it. After parking the truck, we made our way inside, with me holding the gloves. Alana met Chris from the EPA and the state governor, neither of whom knew she was my date. In just 20 minutes, we were flying with representatives from a news group and the expert who had cared for the birds. Even though Alana had flown before, this was her first time in a helicopter. She was thrilled, enjoying the feeling of being in the open sky. I smiled as she held onto my hand for reassurance. The flight felt quick, and soon we began to descend toward the flat area of the crater. Once the helicopter landed and the engine was quiet, I saw Alana start to relax on solid ground again. The cool morning air made her cheeks blush, which I thought made her look even prettier. We both admired the beautiful scenery, with fresh snow, clear water, and tall pine trees all around us. The place looked pristine and breathtaking. Our awe grew when we saw a fish leap out of the water to catch an insect above the calm surface. Alana commented on how surprising it was that she hadn't noticed the fish, despite the lake's clarity. It was clear that Alana was still buzzing with excitement, and her face showed it all. As soon as the helicopter blades stopped, we stepped out. I was surprised at how much larger the flat area appeared compared to what I had imagined. I was happy to see that the crew on site was making great progress and seemed to be ahead of schedule. The female news reporter pointed out how the crew was working hard to disturb the environment as little as possible, which added to our sense of purpose for the day. This indicated to me that she was starting to understand the message we wanted to share. However, the conservation representative looked a bit worried because the eagles were restless. I reassured him that I would take charge of releasing the birds. He felt a little worried until I brought out all our supplies. Once I made sure Alana had everything she needed, I was concerned she might feel too cold to participate. I got ready and walked over to the first cage to take out a female eagle. It was clear she was quite anxious. Alana watched intently as I took a moment to help calm the eagle before handing it to her. I gently removed the cover from its head. They stared at each other as if trying to connect. It was a special moment as they looked eye to eye. I could see that Alana was trying hard to stay calm, even though the excitement in the air was palpable. When I bring out the male eagle, we'll release the ties that hold their legs. Then we'll lift our arms to the sky as we let them go, I said. Their instincts will kick in, and they will soar away free. It took a bit longer to prepare the bigger male eagle. He was acting independent, which slowed me down. Once he was ready, Alana and I stood about 8 feet apart. I removed the cover from his head. On the count of 3, I said, before beginning the countdown. Together, we untied the strings holding their feet. We raised our arms and released the first pair, watching them fly up into the sky. It all happened so fast that it felt surreal. Alana came over to me, took my hand, and said, "This is a moment I'll never forget. To be so close to something so beautiful and powerful is beyond anything I imagined. Being able to hold them and set them free has made me feel so much. Thank you for this surprise. I will always treasure this memory." The news crew captured everything, including her heartfelt words. The commentator mentioned she thought this was our first official date. As Alana and I watched the eagles fly away while holding hands, the governor shared details about the partnership between the state, the EPA, and my small company. After a while, he introduced me to the group so I could explain our work. I took about half an hour to answer all their questions. When they asked about the power plant we were building, I explained it was for the future growth of the valley once it was fully restored. Alana's attention was always on me. We repeated the process and released the second pair. This time, Alana was ready and focused. She seemed to enjoy letting the second pair go more because she felt more confident in her actions. The news crew, while we were flying out, captured the whole area with close-up shots to showcase the project. Everyone was caught up in the excitement as Alana talked to the reporter, sharing updates about what was happening on the site and my plans for the future. It was clear she was very proud of what I was doing. I found it interesting when the news reporter asked Alana how we had met. I listened as Alana explained how I had stepped in during an important moment. When I woke up from surgery, she said, "The first thing I did was ask Dirk to promise he would go to the spring prom with me." Once the cameras were turned off, the governor commented, Your young friend has done more to help us gain support for this project than anyone else. Seeing it from a young adult's viewpoint means a lot. If the news crew wants to do a follow-up, may they come? Anytime, I replied. I've got nothing to hide. I did not realize how important my honest answer was to someone who had to question everything a person said. When we returned to Richmond County Airport, the governor had a few more words for the camera. I wasn't fully in favor of this program at first, he stated. I reluctantly agreed, but the more I learned, the more I understood what was at stake. Seeing the eagles released and the beautiful green land beneath us showed me what was being accomplished. Recent reports from our office show steady progress in safely cleaning up the contaminated ponds that were threatening the river, he added. I want to thank the EPA and Dirk Blackstone for their willingness to take on this big project. What has been achieved so far has exceeded my expectations. I can truly say that I look forward to annual checks as this long-term project moves forward, the governor continued. The eagle release is the first test to see if we can give back to nature what we have taken from her. The governor then asked to speak to me privately. He wanted to thank me personally for bringing my friend along, thinking it was a great idea that turned a public announcement into an interesting story. We would learn later that thanks to social media, it generated more interest than the governor's office staff could handle. After saying our goodbyes to Chris and the governor, Alana and I headed off. She was so excited that she was talking non-stop. It was hard for me to get a word in. You used your knowledge about the eagle's nervous system to calm them down, Alana said as we climbed into my truck. The conservation representative was surprised by what you did. He mentioned he had never seen anyone interact with the eagles so smoothly. You're right, I replied. Otherwise, things would have turned out very differently. Now, we just have to wait and see if they will make this place their home. What's next for us? Alana asked. Let's find something to eat, I replied. I'd prefer something that isn't fast food. I watched as Alana moved to sit next to me in my truck, acting like it was where she was meant to be. She called her mom to tell her about our day and asked her to record it if it showed up on the news. I could tell her mom was having a hard time believing what we had done. My mom wants to know if we'll be there for dinner, Alana said. I think we can make that happen, I answered. Plus, I want to see if the eagles are still around before it gets dark. Alana chatted with her mom for a bit more, explaining everything that had happened. I thought to myself that if I was trying to impress her, I couldn't have done a better job. Suddenly, Alana started to laugh and told her mom, I just realized we're probably going to be on the evening news. I'll be the talk of school next week. I found a nice local restaurant and parked just as Alana said she had to hang up. My future husband, Alana joked. I don't think anything will top the start of our day. I laughed and replied, You're getting ahead of yourself. What makes you think we're that compatible? Dirk, Alana said. You don't see how special your view of the world is. You find joy in things that others miss. And today you showed me something really remarkable. The way you connected with those eagles was amazing. I noticed things that others might not have. I looked at her, feeling confused and not sure how to reply. Don't give me that look, she insisted. Just admit I'm right. Your connection with nature is a special talent most people won't ever have, and it's fantastic because it can't be learned. That was when I realized Alana understood me in a way I hadn't seen before, and she was right. I had never thought of what I saw as a special gift. It reminded me of what my teacher used to say. You understand life as a whole and how everything connects, and that shows in your perspective. As soon as we got out of the truck, Alana took my hand, and together we went inside for a late breakfast. After eating, we explored some of the local small museums before heading back to check on the eagles. Throughout the day, she stayed close to me. While we walked around the museums, she noticed how interested I was in the history of the exhibits. Why are you so curious about our old culture? Alana asked. Learning how a society changed over time, I answered, helps me understand today's world better. You want to learn about the past, Alana said, to get clues about our future. We stood at the edge of the strip mine, watching 3 out of 4 eagles flying high as the sun set behind the mountains. It felt good, like evidence that the eagles were settling in and finding enough food. We watched them disappear into the mountain peaks. Then the gas collection pipes started to work. Each pipe began its process, and soon flames erupted from them. Alana gasped as the green area lit up with the light. "If you were trying to impress me," Alana said, "you really succeeded." "It is beautiful," I replied. "I didn't expect so much gas to build up so quickly." "You did it again," Alana said. "I couldn't have asked for a better ending to this amazing day. From here, the lights form a pattern like a Celtic cross." We stayed a few more minutes, enjoying the calm and the dancing flames in the gentle breeze while sharing warm hugs. We both felt it was a special moment. As the night deepened, the lights below captivated us even more. We finally had to leave because her parents had dinner planned for 7. We got back to her parents' house with a few minutes to spare. If they were worried about how our first date went, those worries faded when they saw the smile on Alana's face. "Dirk, I don't know what you did today, but my daughter looks very happy," Ian said with a smile as we walked in. Alana shared the best parts of our day, telling them how it started and ended. Bonnie mentioned that she recorded clips that had aired on the news, split into 2 parts. So we gathered to watch them before dinner. The first part was about the news, with comments from the governor. It gave a brief look at the site and what we were doing. The second part focused on our first date, showing how I managed to calm the eagles so we could release the birds. They captured Alana's words just after we let the first pair go. They finished by announcing that a special program about the day's events would air next Saturday at 7. The commentator said, "I don't know if any man can top what Dirk Blackstone did on his first date to impress a girl, but it certainly worked." It was clear they had a strong connection. Alana released the birds with confidence, showing a remarkable bond with them. If Alana wasn't in love with Dirk right then, by the end of our trip, everyone could see that she was. Both Alana and I were surprised by how big the 4 birds were. The cameraman caught the moment when the eagles spread their wings and flew away from us, showing that they were grown birds. It made for a stunning shot. I noticed Bonnie got quiet when the lady news reporter talked about how we first met. "I told you, Mom," Alana said. "Dirk has something special about him. The way those beautiful eagles responded to him showed that. The expert said Dirk has a special way with the eagles, which is why everything went so well." Later that night, as Alana walked me to my truck, she asked, "Do you think our eagles will stay around?" "We'll find out eventually," I answered. "I hope they can find enough food here. The big question is whether all the work going on will scare them away." Before we said goodnight, Alana and I shared a nice moment and talked about the upcoming prom. I took off my father's ring and suggested that we be exclusive until she decided to return it. Alana said she would wear it around her neck with her Celtic cross. On Monday, I found out that everyone who knew someone connected to me had seen the 2 news clips. They became the talk of the office. Many of the women there said Alana and I seemed like a perfect match. Most agreed that it was a good move, as it answered many questions that didn't need to be asked. That was when we decided to promote ourselves as a land restoration company. Whenever someone thought about it, they looked out the window to see if they could spot the eagles. When someone did, they would announce it, and everyone would gather to watch. I missed it, but that simple act brought us all together. It had been more than 2 weeks since Alana and I had our first date. We had chatted in the evenings, but things at the site had gotten busy. The concrete plant was finished, and we started getting the materials and chemicals we needed to make concrete. Choosing this site was easy because the drilled well showed it was right for the cement plant. So we focused on getting the first area around the stripped mine leveled off. This meant preparing parts of the site and moving the rock. Leveling it involved using crushed rock and sand, framing the molds, and adding support. David and his crews began where the county road ended. To do that, we had to put in a new road to the mine office. So we made a proper parking lot to go the extra mile. The work was finished quickly after we took away the top layer of soil and replaced it with piles of crushed rock and fine sand. We then covered it all with a thick layer of tar that was pressed down and compacted well. The team thought the new road was a big improvement. With the topsoil we saved, we spent 2 days leveling the ground around the building. We made a picnic area so everyone could enjoy lunch outside when the weather was nice and created walking paths before planting new grass. I didn't realize that each piece of concrete for the road would be 2 feet deep. As always, we collected as much of the topsoil as we could and moved it to the area where we make soil. At the same time, we set up the connections the county needed, but we wouldn't connect them until we had an agreement. We were busy watching the first concrete being poured for the road when I got a phone call from Alana. Her father had bought a few wild horses from a special area in Northern California. They had just arrived a couple of days before, and one of the handlers was struggling to manage one of them. Alana asked me to come over because her parents were out for the day. I was surprised to find she was home until she mentioned it was spring break. When I arrived at Connor's place, I was very upset. 4 men were holding a large white horse down with ropes, and the leader of the group was using a whip whenever the horse tried to lift its front legs. Their actions were making the horse more scared and anxious. The men didn't realize they were making the horse even more protective and defensive. The horse had been wild all its life and was not used to people. I parked suddenly and jumped out, rushing toward the area where the horses were. I climbed over the fence in one leap. Later, I realized this was the first time Alana saw me so relaxed. Alana noticed my anger. She watched as I stood in front of the leader just as he was about to strike the horse. I quickly knocked the whip from his hand before it could hit the horse. He was angry that I had interfered and tried to push me back. I grabbed his arm and pushed him against the fence near the gate, catching him off guard. He stumbled back, surprised. I picked up the whip before he could recover and warned him, "If I ever see you near a horse again, you will regret it. Now, leave Connor's land." "You heard him," Alana said. "You should listen to him because you and your friends are no longer welcome here." The man replied, "You don't have the power to tell me that." "You have my dad's number," Alana replied. "Call him and explain what happened here." I then focused on the white horse, which was still very upset. As he lowered himself onto his front legs, I reached my hand out gently, moving back or forward depending on where he seemed likely to step. Alana watched as the man spoke to her father, and soon it was clear they were all dismissed. I kept my attention on the horse, staying close to show that I was not a threat. I believed that once he sensed my presence, he would feel my calmness. I heard a cell phone ring while I focused on the movements of the stallion. Later, Alana told me that watching our interaction felt like witnessing a dance as trust was built between us. Gradually, he began to calm down, realizing I meant him no harm. Once he stopped his frantic movements and his breathing relaxed, I slowly approached and gently unfastened the ropes that held him. I was careful, making sure not to startle him. "Alana, could you bring me some fresh hay and a bucket of horse feed when you're done talking?" I asked. "Sure, it will take me a few minutes," she replied. The horse and I started to connect while she went to get the supplies. When she returned, I took some hay from her and, being careful, offered it to the horse. For a little while, we shared a quiet moment, but then the horse caught my scent. I hoped all the excitement would make him hungry. If I was right, he would be drawn to me. It was a joy to see him slowly approach, sniffing the air. Once he realized what it was, he began to eat from my hand. We repeated this a few times. Each time I got more fresh hay and the horse came closer. When the hay was gone, I asked Alana to hand me the feed bucket. This time I met the horse halfway, holding it up as he began to eat. As I left the pen, the horse had settled down. Alana looked at me with tears in her eyes. I took her in my arms and let her feelings flow. When she calmed down, she said, "Thank you for coming quickly. That man was going to come back after you confronted him, but then he saw the scars on your back. I think that made him realize you had been through a lot and weren't someone to challenge." "What does your dad plan to do with these horses?" I asked. "That one was the horse I chose for my birthday present," Alana replied. "The others will be trained and then sold through a local farm market website." "Your scars are fading, but it's clear you've had difficult experiences," Alana said. "When did that happen?" "When I was young," I answered. "It was part of what the monks did to try to make me remove the cross I wear. When that didn't work, the person who became my protector stepped in to help me." "Why didn't you take it off?" Alana asked. "My grandfather, Lachey, gave it to me to keep until I could return it. It was never mine to give away." I saw Alana start to get emotional again, so I added, "The last I heard, he was released from the work camps and moved out of the country. I know they moved to the U.S., and that's partly why I came here." We hugged for a moment before I turned to the white horse. I asked her to come with me as we went back to him. We walked toward the horse, holding hands and going slowly. For a bit, we just stood there. I explained that we were letting the horse get used to our scent so he could feel safe around us. After a few minutes of moving closer, using a method my protector taught me, I gently touched the horse's forehead in 4 spots with both hands. "Alana, I want you to whistle," I said. She did, and I asked her to repeat it 2 or 3 times. Each time, I noticed the horse's ears perk up. I repeated the process a few more times until Alana seemed a bit tired. Next, I had Alana walk to the far corner of the paddock and whistle again. When the horse heard her, he raised his head and walked toward her as if he had always done so. Alana was surprised that the horse came to her so willingly. "Alana, the horse trusts you now," I said. "Over the next week, slowly build your relationship with him. Start training him gently with riding gear. Begin with a soft blanket and get him used to following you with it. He needs to feel comfy with that before you move on to anything else. Make sure you're the one who takes care of him at night and reward him for his good behavior like I did." "Are you what they call a horse whisperer?" Alana asked. "I'm not sure what that means," I answered with a chuckle. "I'm just using some of the skills my adopted father taught me." I didn't realize we had been together for nearly 4 hours. I was thinking about cleaning up to leave when her parents arrived. As they pulled in, Alana decided it was time to take her horse to the barn for the night. As I opened the gate, I reminded her, "Whistle and then walk toward the barn. If he stops, whistle again and repeat until you've led him into his stall." Once she and the horse were safely inside, I closed the gate. I watched her whistle every time the horse paused. I walked over to my truck and started to put on my shirt while Alana continued following my instructions. Slowly, the horse followed her, always staying a few steps behind. Ian and Bonnie stepped out of their Explorer and watched in amazement as their daughter and her new horse disappeared into the barn. "Have you been here since I called for Alana?" Ian asked. "Yes," I replied. "I had to help the horse. When I arrived, the people working with it had scared it so much that it almost hurt itself." Just then, Alana came out of the barn to join us. I used the edge of my truck's floorboards to put my shoes and socks back on. "Mom, Dad, did you see how Toby followed me into his stall?" Alana asked excitedly. "It's all thanks to Dirk and how he connects with animals. I've never seen anyone take the time to build such a strong bond before interacting. It's incredible how far he helped Toby come after how scared it was earlier." "You really are different," Ian said in Gaelic, making everyone smile. "That's what your daughter keeps telling me," I laughed. "She's almost got me believing it." Her parents chuckled, and Alana blushed. "Dad, that's quite a statement," Alana said. "After everything he's done for the family today, you should thank him," Ian replied. "On a serious note, we want to thank you for stepping in and doing what was right," Ian said. "Alana told us you arrived just in time. Come help us with the groceries, and then we'll have some dinner." While they were putting away the groceries, I went to the downstairs bathroom to tidy up and fix my shirt. As I came out, I heard Alana speak. "Mom, have you ever cared for someone so much that it hurts to see them struggle?" Alana asked. "I can understand that," Bonnie replied. "Your grandmother felt the same way about your grandfather when she first met him. She still does. When your grandfather wanted to keep his past from her, it led to some tough talks. They had a big argument that lasted weeks. The lesson is that he had to find a gentle way to share his past to avoid those emotional moments." "Thanks for the advice, Mom," Alana said. "I just wish we could find a way to show Dirk how much we appreciate what he did today." "We talked about it after we called you about what happened," Bonnie said. "We decided to let him choose from the remaining horses so you can both go riding together." I noticed tears in Alana's eyes and quietly joined Ian outside, where he was starting to grill steaks for dinner. "Ever since her classmates saw her on TV releasing the eagles with you, Alana has been much happier at school," Ian explained. "It's wonderful to see her enjoying it. For some reason, people had always viewed her as unique. Now she had earned their respect and acceptance. Some even admired her for what she and I had done on our first outing. It was even talked about at the last local business meeting." "I didn't know that," I said. "I faced similar challenges in high school in Scotland. My struggles came from cultural differences, the local language, and trying to understand Western ways." I see that Alana is wise for her age, which can make it tough for some people to connect with her. She's always been wise beyond her years, Ian replied. Because of that, she goes her own way. She sees the world differently than her mother and I do. When I said you were different, I meant it in a good way. I understand, but the master used to say that there's someone meant for everyone, I mentioned. The problem is that many people rush and don't take the time to find that person. Ian looked at me in surprise. I wasn't sure why. I was just sharing one of the master's lessons. His words are even more true today than when he first said them, Ian remarked. It makes me wonder about what our world would be like if we didn't try to hurry through life. I promise, Ian, I won't rush things until she finishes school, I added. For 2 reasons. She is still young, and we don't know how our relationship might change as we grow. When I marry, I want it to be because I love her, not because I feel pressured. If others had said that, Ian said, I might have doubted them, but everything I see you do shows that you have real goals. Your wise nature tells me you value tradition. Let me warn you, I went through some challenges with her mother before we got married. There were times I really had to be patient because Bonnie was the same age as Alana when I first met her. When the steaks were ready, we brought them inside. Alana sat next to me at the table as if it were the most normal thing ever. While we ate, I thought about Ian's words and felt that he had given his blessing for my relationship with his daughter. That was when I learned I could choose the horse I wanted. So, I agreed to do that on Saturday. It was well after 9 when I returned home to get ready for the next day. Ian and Bonnie overheard Alana say to me, "Good night, my future husband," as I was leaving. Ian turned to his wife and said, "I know she's very mature for her age, but don't you think we should suggest she take her time and let things happen naturally?" "Dear, we both know that when our daughter decides on something, she usually gets what she wants," Bonnie replied. "She has been telling us for years she would meet the man she would marry in her junior year. Dirk came along and changed everything for her. She knew that day he was the one. I have to say, they both really love nature and animals. They are truly meant for each other," Ian said. "Dirk's bond with living things is so special that I can honestly say we may never see anyone like him again." Alana, having heard her parents talking, peeked into the living room and said, "Dad, don't worry, we will figure things out. After all, we just promised to be together. Plus, you know where our home will be when we're married." Ian looked at his wife, thinking that their daughter just made a good point. She continued, "She loves him just as much as he loves her. We see it every time he looks at her. He reminds me of you when we were young, but he might not be ready to say it yet." "Dear, if you remember, you were very young when we met," Ian said. "We had to be careful. Thanks to you, I learned to be patient. Your daughter is just like you, so Dirk will probably feel the same way." "That's true," Bonnie agreed. "Those tough times and our promise to each other made our bond stronger. I can see Alana and Dirk doing the same. Each will help the other grow into better people. Dirk will guide Alana, always being there for her." "And how can you be so sure it will work this way?" Ian asked. "Because, dear husband," Bonnie replied, "that's what I did with you. Dirk already knows where he wants to go in life." I had to apologize to Alana on Saturday because we had been so busy all week that I hadn't called her. The construction crew working on the road kept me very occupied. On top of that, the local counties asked if we could help handle a lot of debris from buildings being torn down in their areas. This meant hiring more workers to sort through it all, as I wanted to save as much as possible. Fortunately, it helped us gather materials to improve our soil. When we saw how much drywall we were getting, I was excited. Most people in the field knew that drywall mainly contained chalk and calcium. We could recycle it for making concrete once I figured out how to safely remove the paper. However, we soon realized it still wasn't enough, as we were using more topsoil than we were creating. We brainstormed ways to increase our soil production when we received a phone call with good news. There had been a big mudslide from unusually heavy spring rains, which caused a lot of snow to melt quickly. It blocked a section of the highway, and the highway department wanted to know if we would take the debris. They thought it would take about 2 weeks to clean it all up. We agreed. The call went out to crew leaders, offering extra hours for anyone interested. Many took the chance to catch up on their bills. They were bringing us loads of mud by truck every day until the work was finished, and we didn't realize they would be working all night long. Our willingness to accept this without extra costs started a new partnership. We had no idea this would solve our soil issues for years to come. As each truck delivered the mud, it acted like a drainage system, with extra water flowing out as it got close. Even though it was still damp when it arrived, we began to stack it right after it was unloaded. During this time, we sorted through fallen trees and plants to run them through the mulching machines. We soon understood how much material we were receiving. It felt like nature was rewarding us, and we thought we would have enough soil for our needs for the next 6 months. All the other benefits that came with it were a nice surprise. The equipment in the mulching area would be busy for weeks. I had to call Alana to let her know that it would take another week before I could come due to everything happening. "Dad and I went to see the mudslide," Alana said. "It looked like half the mountain had fallen. Dad asked where they were taking the debris, so we figured you must be very busy." I was looking forward to a break that Saturday when I arrived at the Connors place. It had been 12 long days of working 16 hours a day without stopping. The weather was warm, so I wore blue jeans and a t-shirt. With spring prom just 2 weeks away, Alana and I needed to finalize our plans. The Connors were taking it easy that morning because the highway was closed, so I was invited in for a late breakfast. I was sitting at the kitchen bar enjoying my first cup of coffee when Alana came in, not realizing I was there. She hadn't put on a housecoat and was dressed for bed. It was clear she looked lovely. I was glad for the countertop that provided some cover. When Alana finally noticed me, she gasped and rushed upstairs. Ian and I chuckled at the moment. "It seems like that's one way to get a man's attention," Ian said, smiling. My face turned bright red. Ian laughed loudly. "The more we see of Dirk," Bonnie said with a smile, "the more we see he's just like any other young man." I felt my cheeks become even hotter. When Alana came back to the kitchen, now dressed for the day, she walked over, wrapped her arms around my shoulders, and gave me a light kiss on the cheek. "I forgot you were coming over today," Alana said. "I won't let that happen again." "And I hope you do," I replied with a smile. Ian laughed and said, "You two remind me of the innocence we had when we were young. We had a few awkward moments with our parents, too." "Just remember," Bonnie said, "it's important to take time to build your relationship with each other. We did, and it has brought us joy all our lives." As we enjoyed breakfast, Alana's parents playfully teased us. I saw it as a warm welcome, feeling like I was already part of their family. After a hearty meal, I offered to help Alana with the dishes. I washed while she rinsed and dried, which gave us a chance to talk about different things. When we headed to the pasture where the wild horses were, our conversation became more serious. "I never realized that setting the eagle free could change my everyday life so much," Alana said. "Kids I passed by every day started saying hello. Some congratulated me, some apologized for underestimating me, and others mentioned they thought my boyfriend had to be really special. I ended up making a few new friends as a result." "The way they saw you changed," I explained. "My adopted father shared a lesson about a leaf. He told me to tell a story about it to a group and then ask each person what they remembered the next day. Everyone had a different story, but he said the one thing that remained the same was the leaf." Alana paused and looked thoughtful. Then she said, "The leaf didn't change, but everyone's view of it did. It wasn't what we did that changed their minds. It was how they saw it." "That's why the negative comments about us have lessened," I said. "People now understand what we're doing better. The governor is happy with how the public feels, and we've learned that the mineral rights to the land will be given to us sooner than expected." "Does this mean you'll start looking for someone to buy the iron ore you need to remove to make a tunnel in the mountain?" Alana asked. "Yes. I think it will take about 2 years to get everything ready for my plans," I said. "Your great-grandfather, Angus McGregor, used the caves in the hills for something similar, but on a smaller scale." "You'll be making scotch on a larger scale," Alana said. "Will it be single malt or double?" "That's something we still need to decide," I replied. "Your dad really likes the single malt." When we reached the pasture with the wild horses, I took off my shoes and socks. "What are you doing?" Alana asked. "I'm going to stand in the middle of the pasture and wait until one of the horses comes to me," I said. "I don't know how long it will take, so feel free to leave if you want." "I'm not going anywhere because I have to see this," Alana said. "Afterwards, you can share how you did that." I walked into the middle of the field and stood still. I lowered my head and closed my eyes, imagining the calm spirit I wanted my horse to have. After about an hour, I felt something beside me. When I opened my eyes, a black stallion was standing next to me. I reached out and whistled softly, noticing Alana watching me closely. She had a smile on her face. Once I took care of my horse, just like I had for hers, I started walking toward the gate. Each time the horse stopped, I whistled, and it continued to follow me. By the time I reached the gate, Alana had it open for me. "I wouldn't have believed it if I didn't see it," Alana said. "You have a truly beautiful and strong horse. Every time you're with an animal or bird, you do something special." After she closed the gate, I put on my shoes and socks. "Alana, the way I handle things depends on what's happening," I explained. It was the horse's curiosity that brought him to me, nothing more. He accepted me, and that made everything easier. Bonnie and Ian watched as we walked back to the barn with the horse following us. "I wish I could have what Dirk has, even for a day," Ian said. "It seems like he invited the horse by just standing still." "He was calm and peaceful," Bonnie said. "He radiated that calm for others to feel." That's what the horse sensed. Dirk has a smart horse. "Maybe that's why they walk like they have no worries," Ian commented. "He keeps things simple," Bonnie said. "That helps him accomplish great things. From what Alana has told me, he asks her about his ideas for the land, both now and in the future. That makes me think he might want to turn it into a nature preserve once he finishes his plans," Ian said. "What I appreciate about him," Bonnie replied, "is that he has always treated our daughter well. They connect without needing many words. Have you seen how they stay so close when they are together?" "What does that mean to you?" Ian asked. "Those two are not just growing a bond," Bonnie said. "They're building a strong foundation for their lives together. They are going to be an incredible team when they come together." Hey listeners, if you enjoyed watching this video and want to stay updated with our latest content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss out on what's coming next. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video with Queen Cheating Tales.